Greek food is really one to be playing around with. Like I was looking at, when I'm putting together these recipes, I have been looking at countries that have particularly lower than average instances of arthritis. And one of the countries that stands out is Greece. So I'm trying to take a lot of recipes inspired from Greek food, although not an actual Greek authentic recipe. It's very much inspired by the style of food they have, using lots of vegetables, and using mushrooms in this case, garlic, olive oil. I'm going to be seasoning with a little bit of fresh oregano. If you can't get oregano, use even parsley. You know, don't get too caught up in if you can't get the exact ingredients. There's lots of things we can do here. Mushrooms, an interesting little, well, they're a fungus, but we'll call them a vegetable. But they're a great source of vitamin D, but in particular when they're exposed to sunlight. They have the same process to create vitamin D as we do in sunlight. So the type of vitamin D you get for a mushroom is actually fantastic, and it's not a bad idea actually to put your mushrooms in direct sunlight for a few hours before actually cooking them, because it considerably ups the vitamin D content. It's an interesting thing with mushrooms. Using a few pumpkin seeds, things like that. Nice, easy recipe, and again, you know, quite satisfying, and using a feta cheese as well, just to sprinkle over and just bring up the protein content in this as well. So, on with the cooking. Now, just to show one thing that I failed to say earlier is with the potatoes in this dish, I've pre-cooked them, I've left the skins on them, there's a lot of nutrients in the potato skins, and just chop them up and cook them until they're just lightly cooked, you know, just basically cooked potatoes, and cut them into a small, kind of a medium-large dice, just to have them all ready to go. And it's good to pre-prep those. So, first of all, into a pan, I'm going to add, usually I'd use coconut oil, but I'm going to use a little drop of olive oil. It's not going to do any harm. It's not a particularly good oil for cooking with, but literally about a teaspoon of olive oil or a tablespoon of olive oil being used for frying is not going to do anybody any harm. So I'm going to just cook my onions first, just to develop a little bit of flavour through them. Then I'm just going to put a pinch of salt and a pinch of pepper. And I'm just going to put a lid on that just to speed the cookery process along. So after a few minutes, the onions just take on a little piece of colour. And then into that I'm just going to add my mushrooms. I'll put the mushrooms into chunks. If you only had button mushrooms, just leave them whole, kind of think about a nice kind of a mouthful size. And then I'm just going to cover that up again and just let that just cook away there, just till the mushrooms start to break down a little bit. It's a good idea sometimes as well to use a little splash of water just to speed the mushrooms along. Just about a tablespoon is more than enough. So when your cooked mushrooms are just a little bit there, and they're starting to break down. A thing with mushrooms as well, a mistake people make is they think their pan is going a little bit dry, and they tend to add more oil. Don't do that with mushrooms. Add a drop of water. A mushroom is almost completely water. I think over 80% water, and a little bit of water starts to draw that moisture out. And you know, it's but adding oil in, the mushrooms just soak it all in. And then you end up with really greasy, horrible oil dish. So, but water is the secret. Now, into that I'm going to add my garlic. I didn't add it earlier because I like to keep it a little bit fresher. I don't ever like to risk burning garlic, especially at high temperatures. Let that infuse a little bit. I'm also now going to add my tomatoes. And let them kind of break down a little bit and start forming, releasing some of their moisture into it. And start to infuse their flavours. So I'm just going to let that cook for a few more minutes with the lid on, just so everything starts to infuse in together. So I'm just after allowing it to cook, let that cook now. I'm going to just allow it to cook a little bit with the lid off it, because I want any excess moisture to kind of evaporate off a little bit. And now into that, I'm going to add my peas. I just roughly thawed them out. These are frozen peas.
and my warm potatoes. Now, if your potatoes are cold, just stick them in the microwave, warm up a little bit. It'll just make the whole cooking process a lot easier. We'll just mix all that through. And then I'm just going to put a lid on that just to make sure it gets all nice and hot. Now at this stage, I'm just going to add, just adjust your seasoning. Just have a little taste of it. See, does it need a little bit of salt? Does it need a little bit of pepper? A great product to use as well is that low salt as well, which is a potassium salt instead of a sodium one. I'll use a generous pinch of pepper. But again, this is down to your own personal taste. And now we are almost finished. No point in getting more complicated than we need to with food. So, that dish there just needs a little bit of finishing now at this stage. So to finish, I'm just going to turn it off. And then get myself a nice plate to just serve it in. And then I'm going to put my mixture into the plate. And now it's just a case of finishing this all off. So I've got my feta cheese, which I've just crumbled up a little bit. I'm just going to crumble that over the top of this dish. No need to be cooking this one or anything like that. And that'll bring that lovely creaminess into it. Then I'm going to get a generous few of pumpkin seeds. You don't have to toast them. They're nice if you toast them a little bit, but not necessary at all. And that'll just bring a little bit of texture into the dish. And then my chopped up oregano, fresh herbs, bit of parsley, chives, anything would do really. Just a nice, good quality fresh herb. And finally a generous little drizzle of a good olive oil. Just have a couple little sprigs of oregano there that I'm just going to pop around the top there. And that's it. Simple as that. A nice little mushroom potato, Greek inspired dish with feta, mushrooms, potatoes, lovely deep flavored dish, and well worth trying.